phone.
Good evening and welcome to Gunner Shot. Today we're going to look at the China's perception of the border problem. We all know that we have a huge border problem with China, right? But we know our perception. Do we really know how the Chinese think about this border, and where are they, and how do we go ahead from here? Because unless you know what the Chinese perception is, you really don't have a bargaining position. So I thought, let me speak about all this to you. But first, before that, let me welcome Vijay Galande as a member. Thanks for joining Gunner Shot as a member, Vijay. Honored. Why should I deal with this subject today? Two reasons. One, like I said earlier in one of my podcasts, I did a lot of research on this, and I had to speak to a set of army officers who were on the LAC, and it was a program for them, and I spoke to them on this very subject. So I am telling you something which I researched, spoke to army officers of the rank of brigadier, and they liked this presentation. So I said, let me share it with you, because there's nothing classified in this. This is a research topic. And the second reason why I have opted for this particular presentation at this point of time is because of this news. And something like this, it's been coming daily in all Indian papers. You see that there is a thaw in India-China relationship, and our external affairs minister said 75% of the problem is solved, 25% is left. China says at four places disengagement has taken place, but they keep quiet about the two main disengagement which has not happened at Demchok and Depsang. There seems to be some rethink in the Indian position. We seem to be wanting investment from China, all that. In all this, the border issue is being pushed back. That's the point. And I read also somewhere very recently, a couple of days back, that China is not going to relent on the border. And it's not keen at all. While it wants to move forward and all that, China feels India has not done enough. That's the basic thing. And China feels it is, you know how China is. China always looks at its own thing, and they'll paint you as a villain. And that's what China is doing in this case also. Okay, so I thought, this is the second, but the major reason. We all have to understand what is at stake here. If we don't understand what's at stake, we are in a mess. Okay, when you look at the contested border, you go into the YouTube, Google, and search Google for this map, you'll get it. And this map was published by South China Morning Post some time back. This is the standard map which defines the problem areas between India and China. Okay, on the right extreme is the McMahon line. Okay, Arunachal Pradesh, which now they claim as South Tibet. Okay, and then in the central sector, the small yellow dots. And of course, in the north, if you see, they've here shown Karakoram Pass, Ladakh, and Pangong Tso and all that. And the LAC runs there, and the yellow bit is Aksai Chin, which we claim. They've shown the Phang Plains and all that. But this is the status as of now. We will, and the red line is the LAC as per what is there on ground. Give and take a few issues. So now let us analyze this part. Okay. Now, when we talk of the border dynamics, We have to understand something very fundamental. That's something very fundamental. China has been shifting the goalposts from then to now. In 1962, the border or the frontier, border, call it what you want, was Aksai Chin and other occupied areas because that's what they our claim line was. I'll explain those claim lines later, and that's what the whole story was. 62. Now, post 62, the LAC went into a dispute at various places. Post 2003, when I say post 1962, LAC went under disputes. It also got into some kind of a dispute during the Sundrangcho incident in 87. So there was a change then. So 62, there was a change when post 62, entire Aksai went away from us. 87, the Sundrangcho incident, small dot, where Chinese are still there, came into new existence. Post 2003, the Chinese have started claiming entire Arunachal as South Tibet. So another goalpost was shifted. And post 2020, now they're sitting halfway across Depsang and Demchok, and they've created buffer zone. The goalposts are shifted. The issue which I keep telling everyone is we are talking about this today. The entire Indian media is talking of this, whereas we should be talking about this. How do we get back to that area of 1962? I do agree that the first step for this is this, the last one, the current border as it exists, or the current LAC with all its problems. Okay, or the post 2020 where we are actually sitting eyeball to eyeball. But there's no discourse on the other three. And that's why I thought, let me rake it up. Right? If I don't, then that's all gone. Okay. Now, when you talk of China's perception of the border problem, we have to understand there are two parts to this. The first part is China's perception, and second is the border problem. Right? That's why the how I've defined the subject also. So there's a perception, China's perception, and the border problem. But first, let's understand the border problem. Once we understand the border problem, then we'll see what China feels about it. Okay. Now, let me get back to this map. If you look at this map again, right, Arunachal Pradesh in yellow, being claimed by, what shall I say, uh, China as South Tibet. So that is a major point of dispute. That's the border problem, really. Okay. And if you go to the north, entire Aksai Chin being occupied and claimed by China as theirs. And the current LAC running in Ladakh from Demchok to Pangong So to Karakoram Pass, with the Demchok and the Depsang face off ongoing at this point of time. So this is the current status. Okay. Now, how do we go ahead from here? Right. Let's get back to. Now, the thing is this. Yeah. We'll get back to the 1914 Simla Convention because you understand this whole story through that. What was the Simla Convention all about? It was a tripartite meeting between Great Britain, then China and Tibet. It was not about India. Understand this. Because 1914 we were still Great Britain's colony. The convention was about the status of Tibet and the boundary between Tibet and China. It is not about the McMahon line. It is not about Eastern Ladakh. That the boundary between Tibet and India was never disputed. In fact, it was never discussed seriously. They said McMahon line jab bhi khatam ho jayega, that's the end of the story. That was the clarity which they had in 1914. Now, at that point of time, the Chinese rep One day I agreed, but that same night he packed his bags and ran off. He didn't sign the next day. That's a convention. Okay. And thereafter, the whole thing went into a limbo. In 1962, China crossed the McMahon line, came up to Tawang. They crossed Tawang. They even came up to not didn't yeah almost to Tenga Bombdila they didn't cross. Derang and all that they crossed. Okay, but they went back. They went back, and very interestingly, though they have never agreed to the McMahon line, Chinese, and they've constantly repudiated it, but they've generally adhered to it. The only point of contention today on the McMahon line as we stand at this point of time is in the Tagla Hatungla Ridge on the westernmost uh, part of the McMahon line, which is near Bhutan. The rest of the McMahon line we are holding. Actually, we don't have any problem with it. And of course, in the rest of Arunachal Pradesh, in the fishtail area, and a few places like Longju and all, there are certain pockets which China has occupied. We could probably live with them also, right? With these, but post 2003, everything south of the McMahon line, Arunachal Pradesh, they started claiming as South Tibet. That's a different story. We'll come to it. In the Simla Convention, the western border was never discussed. I mean, that is the funny part. For what reason, I can't say, but it was never discussed. Okay, right. Now let me get to a fundamental set of parts, map and lines about the western part, because this is something which everyone must understand. So I'll get out of the frame and I'll put just the map and I'll keep talking about it. Okay, now it is enlarged fully. We'll talk of it. Okay. The first line is called the Johnson line. It defines the Sino-Indian border of 1947. Now that is the line, the original line. Okay. Then there's a second line which is called the McCartney-MacDonald line, which was considered by the British as the informal border till 1959. Okay. And this was the green line was considered as the informal border. As so, to a large extent, the Britishers left us with a problem without clarifying to us what is our border, and we just inherited it. Okay. Then there's a third line called the Foreign Office line of 1873. In 1873, this was what they thought. But later, by 1914, they changed their mind and went to the Johnson line. But then they also felt that 1959 is the thing. And that line, the 1959, runs along the Laktang Range. Okay. Right. The next line is the Xinjiang Tibet Road. So, what is the Xinjiang Tibet Road about? This is the road. Okay. Now, it goes from Tibet to Xinjiang. Now, I'll come and explain a little later the importance of this road, which is the crux of the problem actually. Okay. And then there's the famous line, this last line, which is actually the approximate alignment of the Chinese claim line. Approximate, because I did this thing. And it is also the approximate alignment of the LAC. So there are 4 clear lines. Okay. And we are now resting at the black line innermost. And this entire story of China claiming up to that is to give depth to that highway, Xinjiang Tibet Road. If China cedes and gives Aksai Chin back, okay, if it gives Aksai Chin back, then it has to give back that road part of it. It will give up that road. That will not be acceptable to China. Even if they accept the informal border of 1959, the road actually runs at the base of the Laktang Range. it won't be it won't be acceptable to China because you're sitting on top of the road. The foreign office line is largely imaginary; it has got no value. But today the Chinese want the black line almost, and I'll come to it. Okay, now this is the geography of Tibet and Xinjiang. Just understand this whole story, in a slightly different manner, and I would just slightly different manner. That's the way actually things are uh, on ground and how the whole thing plays out. Okay, look at this. You see, this is the Pamir Knot, and you see the from the south to the north on the east side is the Great Himalayan Range, then the Karakoram Range, then the Kunlun, and then the Tian Shan. Now, the area between the Kunlun and the Great Himalayas is the Tibet, with the Karakoram in between. Generally, okay, the area between the Kunlun and the Tian Shan is Xinjiang, and with the interconnecting rib called Altantag. Okay, but that's not important. Altantag is not important. Now, what is important is this. This is the Aksai part of where it falls. Now, if this yellow part which I've shown is held by India, the connection between Tibet and Xinjiang is not there. Anywhere behind in Kunlun, right up to where the Kunlun finishes in this case, right? People can't go from here to there and not to south. In which case, there's a singular approach to Xinjiang and there's only a singular approach to Tibet. Which means anyone who wants to create trouble in this area can do so at ease. And that is why the Chinese will never give up this road. Now you see that road, how it goes and what is the importance of this road. Now let me go back to the previous one. See this. You will appreciate this whole story. Okay, how important it is for the Chinese. Now, over and above that, what the Chinese have done, they have, this thing came, they built border villages and all that. Now, why are they building these border villages? I mean, we have to understand this. They are building all these border villages, in my perception, to define the LAC. They are not going to come down south. The LAC will now get defined. Look, villages are there. People on our side are inhabiting these villages. All these villages are Chinese. These villages will be made into exclusively Chinese villages. So their territory is solidified. And this is what Xi Jinping talks solidification of Tibet. And then these villages then serve as a base for any offensive into India to progress their further claim lines. It's a very devious and a deep thought process. Okay. So this is the Chinese problem, okay, which I'm saying, right, border problem. Right. Now, the thing which we have to understand is that China today is sitting pretty on what it considers is the India-China border, almost. While it continues to threaten us with its claims in Arunachal Pradesh and pressurizing Bhutan to give up Doklam. If it doesn't get it, China also knows it will never get South Tibet. But it's a pressure point on us. Similarly, it's pressurizing Bhutan to give up Doklam. There it has a lot of hope. It also knows that even in the north, it can't come anywhere close. Okay? So that's how the whole story is at this point of time. This is the border problem. Understand that. I'll be happy to answer any questions on this. It's important. Now let's look at the Chinese perception. This is interesting. And these are my references, right? Anyone who wants references of how this whole thing has come about, have a look at all these references and more. Major references is what I have put across in this. And now let's look at the Chinese macro perception. What's their macro perception? What do they say, mota mota, which we have to understand, right? What do they say? The first thing is what India wants from China is permanent and it is not reversible. as per the Chinese. What is that? India wants from China a solution to the border. Now, once that solution is done, it's not reversible. It's delimited border. Okay. India wants China to designate, JEM and LAT as terrorists and Pakistan as a state sponsor of terror. Okay. Oh, and if UN supports this, if China supports this in UN, it's permanent. It can't go away. You can't go to UN one day and say this, and second day you change your stance. So both these are of permanent nature. What India demands out of China. You might not think so. This is their perception. Please understand that we are looking this from their side. Now, what China wants from India, they feel is temporary and reversible. So, if they're worried that if today India gets what it wants and agrees with China about whatever China wants, let's say swap, it's done. Whatever is done is irreversible from the Chinese point of view. What they give, what India gives, they feel is reversible. We might change our stance. So that's what he says. What does China want from us? They want normal bilateral relations and opening of trade. Okay, today they feel, okay, India will today say, fine, we'll have good bilateral relations and open trade. What if tomorrow they close? It can. But you can't change the boundary once it is delimited. That's the point. And they don't want us to align with USA. All that is also temporary. And it is so. Tomorrow, there's nothing binding to say that, we will not align with USA. So that is their duvida. जो हमने करना है वो तो पक्का है, वो हमें वापस नहीं मिलेगा. जो इंडिया बोलेगा हमें देने के लिए वो कर सकते हैं. Right? And they feel that if China accedes to the Indian demands, it will be a loser in the long run. Interesting. So you have to understand why they are like, look, I said they're already sitting pretty. Why will they ever agree to our demands? Now see this in the light of what this nonsense is going on in the press. कि 75% प्रॉब्लम हो गया और दो ही पॉइंट रह गए, हम हिंदी चीनी बाई बाई हैं. What is this narrative? Nonsense. This is their permanent position. They also feel India has a forward policy. Again, I'll expand it. Please read it on your own and draw your conclusions. And I will also go along with it. I will go step by step. They say India has a forward policy. And that India seeks unilateral changes on the border. And this policy, they feel, is based on colonial legacies. And this we have inherited from the British Empire. And they also say, and this is all in their writing, I have extracted from their writing and I'm showing you, that India willfully revises the border in accordance with its own security needs. So we are supposed to be doing what we want without taking China into consideration. We know the actuality. And it says it repeatedly intrudes by gnawing and seizing areas controlled and claimed by China in order to test its bottom line of tolerance. That is testing China's bottom line of tolerance. So we are doing the tamasha here. And he feels China is increasingly concerned about India's salami slicing tactics, particularly in the Western sector. So they feel we are doing salami slicing. So who are the masters of salami slicing? China. But they feel we are doing it. And they also feel that India is doing all this and emboldened to do all this because they feel China will not retaliate. And why will China not retaliate? They feel that India feels that China will not retaliate due to US pressure. Achha, they have another problem, and which is this problem is genuine. The Indian military controls most of the commanding heights along the eastern and middle section in the India-China border. It's a fact. Except in Tagla, where the Namkachu comes in between. We are sitting on the Hatungla Ridge and they are sitting on Tagla with a huge valley in between. Every other place in Arunachal, right, we are on top, especially in the Bumla Kameng sector. Okay, they are worried, even in the middle sector. Now, the last point is political, because everything in China is political. Remember that. Modi came into power, and ever since Modi came into power, India's border troops are focused on promoting the forward policy along the western section of the China-India border. So, firstly, he says India has always had a foreign policy from 1947, and ever since Mr. Modi has come into power, that forward policy has gone up a notch. So, actually, as per them, India has had a foreign policy from Nehru to Modi, and strictly speaking, there's no difference between what Mr. Modi has done and what Nehru practiced. Well, I mean, look at it. So we are always supposed to be in the back foot. Right. Then there's a debate they have within China about the improvement in the border infrastructure. What does that say? They say that border standoffs have become fiercer because of the improvement in the approachability to the border. Infrastructure has increased, people can come and stay, patrolling is going on. So there are patrol clashes, people come to meet. If earlier days when the roads were remote and away from each other, so they never know any meetings or border clashes was not there. But today, because the improvement of infrastructure on both sides, border clashes are happening. But the truth is that they have developed the border long back. It is now that we are increasing our border standoff infrastructure. As our infrastructure increases, they fear that the patrolling will increase. As patrolling and face-offs increase, the friction points will also increase. That's the second part. These factors enable Chinese and Indian troops to conduct more frequent patrols and respond more quickly and assertively against intrusion and infiltration from the other side. So there is an issue here which we have to understand. And to a large extent, I go with this premise. Because if you are able to approach a point together, and if that point is under dispute, there will be a clash. Okay. Now, what next? Article 370. Now, Article 370, we keep giving the thought of Article 370 and its impact on Pakistan. But it has had a tremendous impact on China, which we have not understood. So, what do they write? They say in 2019, India set up the Ladakh Union Territory and included part of Chinese territory in western sector of China-Indian boundary into its administrative jurisdiction. This is a political strike as per them. We keep saying, no, well, they have put 10, names in Arunachal Pradesh as in China and all that. What have you done? You have actually claimed the whole thing back by saying that is our union territory. They're worried. So those who feel, no, we have not done anything and all, go back. This is their view. You have already done this cartographic political strike already. Actually, you revived the whole problem. And then, immediately after Article 370 was abrogated, and our External Affairs Minister, Mr. Shankar, went to China and told them, look, this is our internal matter concerning our territory. So it's nothing to do with China and all that. But China feels that we have undermined Chinese territorial sovereignty. Just think the effect. You go back to that map. Let me go back to that map which I showed you. Okay. Here map, dekho. From black line to the dotted black line. We have said all this is part of now, you know, the Union territory of Ladakh. We also included Gilgit-Baltistan in this. So they feel that we have undermined their territory in this by doing so. So there is a problem which we have to understand in this article, yeah, Article 370. Many times I think we have underestimated this factor, and this is one of the factors I feel has led to the 2020 clashes. Okay, now let's understand this a little more in detail. You see, look at this area. You see in POK, Aksai Chin, right? Shown, right? India, I've shown that brown dot between POK and Aksai Chin is the Shaksgam Valley, which has been illegally ceded to China. Okay. And then you see this area, Xinjiang and Tibet, I've shown. See the area surrounding Xinjiang. Xinjiang borders Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Afghanistan in that Bakan corridor. This map is very important for you to understand this border problem and why the Chinese are jumping up and down like idiots. Let's look at this again. The abrogation of Article 370 renewed China's claim on Aksai Chin, right, and violated the status quo through an act of the parliament. The status quo has been finished. That's put the heebie-jeebies under China. In addition, we started a mountain core raising. This was at that point of time, now the Orbi hai. And they're worried. They're terribly worried of this development. Okay. And then we develop this. You see at the bottom, again, I'll show that. See, DSDBO road between Aksai Chin and POK. Now, what does this road do? It gives you access into Xinjiang and it gives you ability to go across into Xinjiang. The moment you do that, you are threatening what? You are threatening the CPEC. If you threaten the CPEC, you not only threaten the CPEC, you also are fingering China in a sensitive area where it has borders with 5 other countries. POK likha to that's Pakistan, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. So it's very sensitive. So understand their perception and why they will not give up this entire area. It's very critical to them, apart from the fact that the road is going through that. And then they feel that the Indian government has changed the crisis management model. Earlier, the whole story was neither side shall open fire within 2 kilometers of the LAC and all that. And we also said at some point of time, no bullet has been fired. And it describes, it is all about the maturity of India-China relationship and all. But now they feel that, look, that model has been changed. And India is prepared to use force in dealing with the crisis. And they quote the Kailash Range operations for this. They're worried about it. Let me be very honest with you. They're completely worried that, India can do a Kailash Range operation and put them on the back foot. And somewhere our NSA has said the use of force was approved with alacrity at the topmost level, and the Indian government authorized freedom of action at lowest tactical level. So that they keep quoting in all their writings. And that's why I said the Indian government's policy today, right, is of Nehru's forward policy. So what you're doing today is equivalent to what Nehru did in this thing. So that's their logic. I mean, you might not agree with it. I also don't agree with it. I don't think any sane Indian will agree with it, but that's their logic. So they are trying to see their perception. Okay. Then there's the issue of simultaneous rise of China and India. See, understand that this is a macro issue. Never in the history of humanity have been the two most populous nations rising together. We never had a common border. we had the buffer called Tibet, and the Tibet vanished. And when two nations rise and they never had a common border, in fact, they have a disputed border, friction is bound to occur. As simple as that. And that's what they say. China and India are not accustomed to each other's new identity. That is the rise. New interests. Both China and India have achieved huge success in national development. People talk nonsense, all of us, that, oh, China has gone ahead and we have not gone ahead. China doesn't think so. China says India has achieved huge success in national development. At this point of time, they feel, okay, we are ahead, but it's not a thing that India can't catch up. And remember, China does everything long term. Okay? They are worried about India. Their aspirations, interests, and powers are quite different from those of the 1980s. They see a changed India. The next thing is they feel that the scope of collusion of interests between the two countries is expanding. That means they are looking at South China Sea. That it is only not the area which will expand. How this collusion will take place is also expanding. So where we can get into firefights with them or conflict with them, the chances are increasing. And that is why I'm going to talk about these few issues. I'm going to do solos on all this. I've written, like I told you yesterday, I've written an article. It should come in ET, Economic Times, Government. I'll put it on the web, on the platform also. So have a look at it. The coming war with China. We're going to have a war with China. What it is, I'll explain. And when, also I'll explain. I have no doubt about it. Never had a doubt about it. But the kind of war, what type of a war is the point which we need to discuss, I'll discuss. That's the first part. And the second part, which I must, because all this Chinese perception and all, we have to be very clear, because when we talk of the coming war with China, one. Two, there's going to be a change in the status of Tibet. I'm telling it now, and I'm going to explain to you as to how this whole thing, I'm writing it out, I'm doing research and writing it out. When I finish writing and get my article published, then I will come back and tell you, because I need clarity of mind. Because these are heavy subjects, okay? And let me take a $1,000 bet. Show me one channel who will go into the details the way I've gone and explain to you. $1,000. Okay. That's why I say come to Gunner Shot. If you want masala, go elsewhere. You want absolute facts, analysis, research, come to Gunner Shot. Subscribe to Gunner Shot and press the like button, please. Okay. And the last point in this is, he says India's strategic misgivings about China have expanded beyond the maritime into the maritime, beyond the line of actual control, into the maritime sector. It also affects regional connectivity, Indo-Pacific order, cyber security, space weapons, and many other areas. So that means China sees us as a major competitor in all this, whether it's in the border or the maritime sector, cyber, space, everything. Please remember, we have an image of ourselves. Oh, China itna aage chala gaya. The China chap looks over his shoulder and says, "यार India मेरे को पकड़ रहा है." हम तो बेवकूफ के बेवकूफ हैं. We don't see what that fellow feels. तभी तो मैं हर चीज जो है ना उधर का दृष्टि दिखाता हूं आपको. And what are the threat perceptions, which is again a very important factor of Chinese perceptions of India. See, India sees China as the primary threat, but China sees India as a secondary threat. Its main threat is USA. So there's a mismatch. Now, China distresses New Delhi. Why? Because we are strengthening our relationship with USA. So that's a threat to them. Okay. That is why China balances India by propping up Pakistan and developing ties with small countries in the region. The string of pearls doesn't exist anymore. There they will support Pakistan no matter what CPCA or Chodo. They will support Pakistan till the end because keeping us busy on the western border helps them. And keeping us busy with Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and all this helps them. So it's high time we started keeping them busy. And that's why I'm going to talk of Tibet. Time है, हर एक चीज का time आता है. Okay, China seeks to prevent an India-US alignment in Asia. It has tried to build a coalition with India on the global level as a member of the global South. They want to get friendly with us so that India-US alignment doesn't take place. Okay. Next, this is again a very interesting thing they have. China innately distrusts any country's foreign policy that is linked to radical domestic politics. So they feel that in India, we have radical politics within India. And they feel that this is the lesson they have learned during the Cultural Revolution. Anyone with radical domestic policies has to be eliminated. They feel that we have. And they also feel that our religious ethnic conflicts, like in Manipur or in JNK, can spill over to China. If they spill over to China, they're in trouble. I mean, just think, if radical Islam goes into Xinjiang, they're in major problem. If you radicalize Buddhism, Tibet is a major problem. So this is their fear. We have to understand their perception, which you have never tried to understand. And you have to play on their fears, right? Okay? And if you look at this article of Mr. Shamsaran, what does he say? What is the Chinese position? Now you're coming to modern times too. Border issues should be properly situated and we should have expand the full range of relations. That should not define the border problem, should not define the overall problem. And they also feel that the border situation is stabilized. And this they've been talking for the past 4 years. They have no willingness whatsoever to return to 2020 status quo ante. I showed you that step. We are now still talking of 2020 status. What we have to go back to 1962 status. And they feel that India has been nibbling away, which I told you. And this is the feeling latest. This is about last year. Okay. And then we have put exaggerated claims in the Western sector. And these will, all our claims, right, would compromise Chinese territorial claims. Okay. Now, what is it? Essentially, they are rejecting the Indian position. And they're rejecting the Indian position that the border situation is abnormal. They feel it is normal. And they feel that this border situation, why should India, hold it against us and not resume normal relations? But the reality is, if they don't clarify the LAC, it enables China to play on the ambiguities, exploit the ambiguities, encroach on our territory, and create pressure points. Right? And there's also a feeling that, which I said earlier, that the Indian and Chinese patrols are meeting at far too much and leading to friction and face-offs. Now, in this article, Mr. Shamsaran says a former PLA officer conveyed that Galwan clashes were not premeditated or planned, but was an accident. That's how they say, well, no, it was not premeditated, it's an accident. Okay. If it is an accident, why are they not agreeing to status quo ante? Right, by galti se ho gaya, let's go back to old. That they're not doing. And they feel that both sides should find a mutually acceptable solution to the border problem without letting specific issues define the overall relationship. And this is what they keep restating. Now, Mr. Wang Yi and SHANKAR have met a number of times. What's his position? He's urging us to ease restrictions on Chinese interests, investment. Okay, that's what it is. Border dispute shouldn't define our overall relationship. That's the same story. Wahi Geet, Sangeet Wahi. We should focus on common interests and meet China halfway. What is this halfway? Halfway is China's full way. Whatever line China draws, that's the halfway. You will take one step, he'll take 10 steps forward. And take that's how it is in Depsang today. And they keep saying this is a line which keeps coming as the world's top two developing countries and eternal neighbors, common interests between China and India clearly outweigh their differences, and achieving common development prosperity is of global exemplary significance, and all this nonsense. You'll find all this in their talks. Even in the article which I showed you, this is the same story. Okay. And there's a widely shared perception in China. They say that India's appetite grows when China makes concessions and forces Pakistan's hand. Okay. Second, our newfound alignment with USA has emboldened Modi's adventurism. This is the second thinking. आम जनता जो सोचती है. India revoked Article 370 5 months after its brinkmanship in Pulwama, which directly challenges China's territorial claims in Ladakh. So the armed Chinese Janta feels that we have intruded into China. And whatever China delivers on Pakistan will not be seen at its goodwill, but a concession extracted due to India's strength and China's weakness. Understand their thinking. See, that's why I can talk what I want, but I write what I want to convey to you. The correct thing you have to understand. India will make even more demands if China delivers anything. I told you earlier also on this in the same today only. What China wants is temporary from India. What India wants from China is permanent. Once that permanent thing is given, we might ask for more. Right? So, what is the impact of any border settlement as for the Chinese? No tangible benefit of giving, and there'll be no tangible benefit by giving up the leverage China today has on India. They accept that they have leverage on us. Okay, continuing to maintain psychological pressure to force India to protect its integrity against China. So they will do this continually. Make India focus its political, military, economic, and diplomatic energies on the LAC. So you keep looking at the LAC. Undermine your maritime potential and ensure that India does not look in China's main direction. China's main direction is the IOR. Make the LAC as your main direction or India's main direction, so you're stuck there. Right? What China wants is Indian neutrality in US-China strategic competition. And then if they do trade engagement with us, they'll enmesh us in this and ensure we don't go towards USA. They're worried about it. Right? And they also feel resolution of the border. If they resolve the border, there's no pressure point on the border. It will open doors for greater Indo-US alignment. So why will they ever agree to whatever you say? And if after this our government does a deal with them, I think our government will then have sold our position down the line. That will be worse than what Mr. Nehru did. That's my view. China wants India on its side. China wants India on its side for its own recovery. I've been telling you. China will not take a step back on its stand on the LAC. After listening to all this, if you think they'll take a stand back, forget it. China will do everything to impede our rise. And China believes, despite its faltering economy, that its time has come to be a superpower to lay a Sino-centric world order. India is an impediment for that. That is why coming war with China is there. We have to understand that. How it will happen, I'll talk about it in detail. China's game plan with India is clear. What should our strategy be? Should we open investment and allow him to do what he wants? And now you suddenly say, यार आज तक तो आप बोल रहे थे कि देप्सांग और डेमचाक आर मेजर प्रॉब्लम्स जयशंकर जी बोलते हैं कि नो वी हैव अ very difficult situation on the border. Next day you say 75% problem over, only 25% left. What kind of nonsense is this? Remember what I've told you. I'm coming back to this. China is sitting pretty on what it considers is the India-China border. And while it continues to threaten us with its claims, it's not going to go back easily. You have to make effort to make it go back, right? And so that is the major issue. And we have to understand this in its entirety, right? I finished making my presentation. Uh, my request to everyone is if you like this video, please press the like button and the bell button and subscribe to Gana Short. I would also request you to join Gana Short as a member because, like I said yesterday, it's for a good cause. Okay, I see again a lot of chatter on the thing. Let me take